ground baits, pellets, wafters, liquids, dyes. There's all sorts of things in the bait world that can blow your mind. I'm here to get rid of those myths and tell you the facts and explain all about some bait. I used a strong fish meal today. God, I've heard that saying a few times. What does that actually mean? Because when it comes to fish meal, I think a lot of people aren't quite educated in how and when and what and how much you actually need. So rather than having your mates tell you they used a strong fish meal ground bait or not, I'm going to give you a little bit of a guide to what that actually is. Now, fish meal is basically a byproduct of crushed old bits of fish and things like that, and it's something that is used in the food industry for different sorts of animal feed and things like that. So fish meal is basically comes in one sort of type. You know, it's a strong, pure, powdered material, and we don't just use fish meal on its own in ground bait. You don't just get a bag of ground bait that is neat fish meal. You know, if you were going to get something like that, we used to do flavour shakers where you could actually enhance the fish meal in your ground bait. So a strong fish meal, weak fish meal, I think that refers to effectively what is mixed with fish meal to then be put in the pack. So I'll give you some examples here. In the 50-50 method and paste, this is the green one that I've got here, half a bag. This has got quite a high fish meal content, which makes it a strong fish meal ground bait because there is a high content of fish meal in it. It's actually one of our highest fish meal ground baits. So that is something that if you're going to go to a water and you want to use a strong fish meal, I would look at something like this. Thatcher's also. Thatcher's has got a high quantity of fish meal in it, which makes it a strong fish meal ground bait. It's not weak, it's not got low quantities of fish meal. So for example, maggot fish meal, which is one of my favourite ground baits for bream and skimmers, has actually got a lower quantity of fish meal in it. So you could refer to that as a weaker fish meal ground bait. And that's basically what we're talking about when it comes to fish meal. So just as a bit of a guide, the strongest sort of ground baits in the range are going to be things like 50-50 green and the barbel ground baits. They're based on crushed pellets that have got a higher fish meal content. Then as you come down the range, you're looking at things like Thatcher's and their match method mix, which has got a, I would probably say, the middle of the road fish meal strength. And then as you start to come down in the range, things like maggot fish meal and F1, they are the much weaker fish meal ground baits, and they're combined with a lot of other byproducts that are used in pellets. So when and why do you use those sort of ground baits? Well, personally, you've got to remember that fish meal is very, very powerful, okay? It's a very strong smell, and it can be overwhelming for fish. If it was used in its sort of raw product, I think you'd find it very overwhelming as a ground bait. So what we do is having the different quantities allow us to control it. And basically the rules are, in the summer, okay, when it's warmer and you want a more powerful ground bait, then you can use things like 50-50 green and Thatcher's and things like that. However, in the winter, it tends to be that fish meal can be too much for the fish. So a turn to F1, maggot fish meal and ground baits like that can be better. I would also advise you, if you're going to use a lot of ground bait, try to steer away from a stronger ground bait. So for example, when you're fishing in the margins, match method mix, F1, they're brilliant ground baits because you're probably going to use a couple of kilos. If you're going to feed small balls of ground bait, or maybe use ground bait in a feeder only, then you can turn to things like 50-50 method and paste, which is a much stronger fish meal ground bait, hence method and paste. It's used in smaller quantities. So that's a bit of a guide and why there is so many ground baits in the Sonubaits fish meal based range, because each ground bait suits a different sort of circumstances. If you're ever in doubt, you can always message people like myself and Des and that on Facebook, and we'll help give you a guide to the ground baits that you might need to use. So get out there, give them a go, and try and learn the types of fish meal that you're going to use and understand them, and you'll probably get a lot better response on the bank.